I have 3 deep loves in my life. 3 deep loves. Number 1, God. Come on. God's a deep love of mine. Number 2, my amazing wife, Summer. Some of y'all might know Summer, my amazing wife, Summer. But number 3, my 2009 Ford F-150. Gosh, man, I love my truck so much. I got it my sophomore year of high school. It was love at first sight. Man, I love the curves on it. Man, it's jet black. Man, I love my truck so much. It took me to college. It took me out here to Arizona. Man, I love this truck so much. It's so reliable. I just feel like a man when I'm driving it. But just last semester, I was driving down Speedway. I was hitting Speedway and where that Circle K is at. What is that? Park? Euclid. I was driving down Speedway. I was coming up to the stoplight, and as I was slowing down for the stoplight, tragedy struck. All of a sudden, a light turns on the dashboard. My steering wheel locks up. I can't press the gas anymore. I am slowly rolling to a stop in the middle of the road. I have to put it in park, turn it off, turn it back on, and she's back. She's back. We're going. I was like, hey, she's never done that before. It's just a lapse of judgment. Like, she's fine. Like, she's all good. Just a little crinkle, but we just ironed it out, and we're good to go. But a week later, same thing happened. This time, I was in the middle of an intersection making a turn. Light turns on. My steering wheel locks up. I can't press the gas anymore. I got traffic coming at me from every direction. I'm freaking out. I put it in park, turn it off, turn it back on. It works again, but I'm realizing I have a serious problem. I've got a serious problem, and I need a serious solution. And so where do you go if your car is a serious problem? The mechanic. And so I take my car to the mechanic. I describe the problem to him, and I'm telling him, what's going on. And he said, hey, I got you. Man, I got your solution. Man, I've seen this problem before. I know what the problem is, and I'm going to fix it for you. And man, I was so thankful. And I remember a few days later coming to pick it up and just driving down the road, just thinking about the fact of, man, I'm so thankful that I was able to find someone that could be the real solution to my real problem. And just as I'm thinking that, it happens again. Light turns on, steering wheel locks up, and I'm ticked at this point. Man, I spent real American dollars for that mechanic to fix my truck, and he didn't. Man, so many of us in life, we have real, serious problems. We go through really hard things. We go through really hard relationships or hurts, or we just have really hard things that we're going through, and they're just really big problems that we have, and we want a real and serious solution. I think back to my freshman year of college. I went to my dream college. It's the only school I applied to. I rushed. Now, I got into a really great fraternity. I was an SAE. I know there's a few SAEs here tonight. Man, I was an SAE at my dream school. Man, I absolutely loved it. I had an amazing major. My grades are slipping a little bit, but I get to the end of the semester, man, and I'm loving life. My life could not be any better. And I come home from winter break, and I remember my mom and my dad sitting me and my brother down, and I remember them telling me, hey, I just want you guys to know that we've been running some tests on your dad, and he's been diagnosed with dementia. I'm a freshman in college. I thought I was on top of the world, but my entire life was shattered. And here's the thing, I know so many of you guys in this room have experienced really hard things in life. And the question is, what do we do about it? Man, what does the Bible have to say about these things? We're in the middle of a series called Facts. And man, what I want to talk to you guys about tonight is, what does the Bible have to say about hard things in life? Man, we're going to get real tonight and talk about really difficult things and talk about what does the Bible actually say about it. You see, so many times I think we run to so many of the wrong things to be the solution to our problems. I know that's true for me. We turn to nasty habits or addictions. We turn to unhealthy relationships. We turn to even career aspirations and success and money, thinking all of those things are going to heal me or fix me or be my real solution. But I think what ends up happening is they just end up satisfying us temporarily. They end up being a bandaid on a bullet hole. And here's what I mean by that. When on a bullet hole, you need something way, way more deep to heal you than just a Band-Aid. If you put a Band-Aid on a bullet hole, what's going to happen is it's going to get infected, it's going to get worse, it's going to bring more pain. And I think it's the exact same thing with these things. And we turn to these addictions and habits and unhealthy relationships, substances, alcohol, these different things to hopefully be the solution to our problem. What ends up happening is more infection and more pain down the road. It's a temporary solution. And so today, I want to talk to you guys about the true place, the real place to find healing and peace in the midst of hardship. And that place is the Bible. And that place is God. And that was true for me, and I know 100% that it is true for you guys as well, because God has such a deep love for us. Lamentations 3:22 says, "The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end." Man, God cares about us so deeply. He knows all the hard things we're going through. He knows the things that hurt us, that have brought us pain, and He loves us so much, and He wants to be the one to solve it. He wants to be the one to give us a lasting solution. And so I'm going to walk us through perspectives and practices of facing hardships with God. Perspectives and practices of facing hardships with God. And so 3 perspectives to remember. We're going to go through one of my favorite verses in the Bible. It's Romans 5:3, and it starts with this: "But we rejoice in our sufferings." When I read this for the first time, man, I was appalled. But we rejoice in our sufferings. Man, how could the writer of this letter say that we should rejoice in our sufferings? I know that whenever I heard for the first time that my dad had dementia, the last thing I was thinking was, let me rejoice about this. Why would the Bible say that? But thankfully, Paul continues. And he says this: knowing that suffering produces endurance. As I was telling you guys before, my wife is an absolute beast. She's awesome. She loves running marathons. She's not like run a marathon once and then put a sticker on the back of her car and a water bottle, call it good. She's run 3 marathons in the past 4 months. I mean, she's an absolute beast. And yeah, give it up for her. Come on. She's awesome, but I remember watching her first marathon, and whenever you watch a marathon, you kind of will go to different mile markers to kind of like just cheer them on and encourage them. And as you do that, you start recognizing the people around them, like either before them or after them. And there's this one guy that really stuck out to me. I mean, he had this neon tank top. He's in like his 50s, and I was like, all right, dude, like probably has like 4 kids, neon tank top, running a marathon. What a beast. Mile 3, mile 6, man, I'm pumped about this guy. Mile 11 rolls around. I see his face, and man, it is agony. I mean, there is something terribly wrong going on. And just to put it frank, I looked down, and my jaw dropped to the floor. There's no like PG way to say this, I guess. The dude was bleeding from his nipples. He was chafing so bad. Blood was coming down his shirt from his nipples. It was absolutely insane. At mile 13, still blood. Mile 16, more blood. Mile 21, he's still bleeding. He's still going. He crosses the finish line, still bleeding. The dude was an absolute beast. And I just remember thinking, man, if he can endure a marathon with that going on, this guy can endure any marathon. Outside of snapping a femur, I don't know what's worse. I mean, come on, that is terrible. He can endure any marathon because he was able to endure a marathon with that. 2 Corinthians 12:9-10 says, "But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly of my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ may rest upon me. For the sake of Christ, then, I am content with weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, and calamities. For when I am weak, then I am strong." And I love this verse so much because at the beginning, it's God saying, my power is made perfect in weakness. And the definition for this word weakness, specifically in this context, means weakness in the soul in direct relation with bearing troubles and trials. What the weakness is talking about here is not a physical weakness, but a weakness that says, I can't go anymore. Man, life is too difficult. What I'm facing is too hard. I cannot go anymore. It's a weakness of the soul. And what this verse is saying is that is exactly when God's power is made perfect. Is whenever we are weak, whenever we can't go anymore. You see, through hardship, we see that God's strength is what will give us endurance. God's strength is what will give us endurance. Through going through one hardship and seeing that God will give us endurance, we can then face any hardship knowing that God will give us endurance. And so the first thing that suffering produces is it grows our endurance. The verse continues and says, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character. James 1, 2 through 4 says, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. Man, I love this verse because it kind of mirrors the verse that we're already going through of, man, when you face trials, when your faith is being tested, man, that's going to produce perseverance. And whenever you persevere, you become mature and complete. Your character grows, your character develops. And what that could look like is that through hardship, your patience, love, faith, care for others, selflessness, empathy, sympathy, all of these things can grow to much greater levels. I know that that's true of me. I know that's true of me, man. The things that I have been through, I know that every single time that I've gone through a very difficult circumstance, at the very least, it grows my sympathy and empathy for others. It makes me care for them more. It makes me feel the pain that they feel as well, and I get to love them better. It grows our character. And so through suffering, we grow in endurance, and we grow in character. The verse continues, it says, but we rejoice in our sufferings, knowing that suffering produces endurance, and endurance produces character, and character produces hope. Romans 8:18 says, for I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us. What it's saying is that the hard things that are happening right now are not even worth comparing with the amazing things that God has in store for us later. Far later, after this life, later. You know, when I think about this verse, I think about two different worldviews. I think about the worldly, secular view, which pretty much means that, hey, I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in what the Bible says. I don't believe in eternal life, heaven. I don't believe in any of that. And then I think about the spiritual view. The spiritual view of there is a God. When I think of the worldly outlook, what they think is that this is all there is. This is it. If I don't live a perfect life now, if I don't have the most comfortable, peace-filled life now, then that's it. I have no more hope. But that's not the case when you're with God. When you're with God, you know there is something far greater coming. Man, you get to be with God one day. Man, this life is just the beginning. It's just the beginning. Man, there's so much hope when you face hardship with God. I remember shortly after hearing and knowing about my dad's diagnosis, I was sitting down with him. At this point, he was pretty aware still. He could talk. He would kind of ask, multiple questions in a row. But it's one of those moments, and I'm sure many of you guys have had these moments before, where you just know exactly where you are. I remember what the weather was like. I remember what we were doing. I remember exactly what we were doing. And I remember asking my dad just about his dementia diagnosis, man, how he's doing, how he's feeling. And what he told me will stick with me for the rest of my life. For the rest of my life. This is what he said. He said, I don't know why this is happening. I don't know why I got diagnosed with dementia. I don't have an answer for you. But I know one thing. God is good. When my dad said that to me, it made me realize how much hope he had, even in the face of one of the worst diagnoses anyone can ever have, the failing of their brain. Man, he knew that God was good. He had so much hope beyond this life. He knew that he could face the most difficult trial he will ever face because he had so much hope. Man, God is good. That quote will stick with me for the rest of my life, and it put into perspective how much hope I have when I face hard things, when I go through difficult situations. When we suffer, we grow in endurance, we grow in character, and we grow in hope. There is a buddy of mine who, man, he has gone through really hard things in his life. Man, I'm sure so many of y'all have gone through hard things in your life. And, man, this is a guy that, man, I think some of you guys should replicate in the sense, man, how much he has turned to God to be the healer for his problems. So everyone welcome up GC.
Hi, guys. Can everyone hear me? I'm kind of a quiet guy, but I hope this works. But my name's GC. That's what a lot of people call me, Giancarlo, by name. But I'm a senior here. I'm an SAE as well. Yeah, and I'm pumped. I'm pumped to tell you guys a little bit about my story. Guys, I'm Hispanic growing up. I grew up in a Hispanic household. My mom, my sister, and my grandma. That was my family. And growing up, I honestly didn't have too much exposure to faith. My grandma, she read her Bible every once in a while. And until I was like 5 or 6, that's my bare minimum of church. So that's when I stopped going to church. And I hope you guys are asking why, because I'm going to tell you. But when I was around that time, my father got deported. And at a young age, that's something I just didn't understand. And it left so many voids. It just left a big void of questions, frustrations. And some of these questions were, man, did my dad not want me? Was he coming back? And the biggest question was, why me? Y'all, throughout my life, I was living for so many different reasons, so many different things. My life revolved around my reputation, my image, and being the guy that everyone loved, being the guy that everyone could crack a joke to. Yeah, it took me until my sophomore year of college to see that a lifestyle lived under the directory of others will lead to a life of burnout and a short-term purpose. Yeah, I felt so purposeless. We're going to jump timelines a little bit. And now we're going into my first year of college. This is when I started talking to my dad again. And I soon realized that this guy was well known. Everyone likes him, and he does so well for himself. He's a great businessman. And I soon found asking myself some similar questions. Why is he doing so well? Why did I have to grow up without a father? Why aren't there answers? And why did this happen to a kid? Y'all, my summer of sophomore year, I was talking to my dad, and he was telling me about all his businesses, all about his life. And I remember I left that call, and I just wanted to feel anger, frustration, all these different emotions that I literally just couldn't. Yeah, I was finally at peace. And maybe some of y'all know Psalm 23. But it goes, wow. This is why I write it down. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He restores my soul. Y'all, the Lord restored my soul. That void that was in my heart that was once filled with resentment and frustration was turned into peace and content. Yeah, it was turned into peace and content. And for the first time, I saw the truth. And the truth was that I didn't have my biological father around, but my heavenly Father was meticulously putting things in place so that I could know him, so that he could draw me to him. My journey is one of many faults. We're all sinful, but throughout this, I learned to just trust him and to grow closer with him. Thanks.
Thanks, GC. Man, that's an awesome story, man. Being able to turn anger and resentment to, man, peace and love. Man, I absolutely love that. What an amazing story. And so, as I told you guys, man, the different perspectives of going through hard things, man. By going through hard things, especially with God, we can grow in endurance, character, and hope. But now I want to talk to you guys about, man, what do I do if I'm in the midst of it? Man, I am going through a really hard thing right now. What do I do? Man, how can I go to God? How can I feel the effects of what the Bible teaches in terms of facing hard things? Well, I'm going to talk to you guys about the practices in the midst of hardships. Man, what should our practices be in the midst of hardship? The first practice in the midst of hardship is to process. Process. This is easily the hardest one for me. You see, ignoring and hiding negative emotions have detrimental long-term effects. I'm sure many of you guys have probably put Mentos in a Coke. If you put Mentos in a Coke and screw the bottle cap, after probably like a minute or so, all it takes is a simple toss, and it would explode the Coke bottle. It's the exact same way when we bottle the emotions. Man, so much pressure gets built up, and all it takes is one simple toss, and man, we'll explode. It'll come out with anger, frustrations. It'll come out with just, man, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to give up. I want to just move. I don't know what I want to do. I just want to leave whatever situation is. Man, so many things it can look like, but man, if you bottle up all of your emotions, it is bound to burst. And so it is so important that we learn to process our emotions. Psalm 13 says, "How long must I take counsel in my soul and have sorrow in my heart all the day? How long shall my enemy be exalted over me? Consider and answer me, O Lord my God, but I have trusted in your steadfast love." I love this so much. I love the book of Psalms. A lot of the book of Psalms is written by a guy named David. And if you've never read this psalm, so much of it is just David pouring out his heart. Man, just being real and honest and vulnerable, talking to God like he was just a person. Man, it's amazing to read, and you see it in this verse just how real and honest he is. And for us, it can look like journaling. It can look like talking it out to a friend. It can look like going to a Christian counselor. I did that a few months back, and it was so helpful for me. It can even just look like talking to God, praying to him, and just being real and honest, not being afraid to talk through your emotions. Man, it is absolutely okay, and it is beneficial, especially when you're in the midst of hard things, to process your emotions, to be real, being vulnerable, being honest. Again, this is easily the hardest thing for me to do. I love bottling my emotions, but every time that I begin to be real and honest is the moment I start feeling God's peace and comfort. The moment I start feeling God truly working my life. The second practice in the midst of hardship is people. Ecclesiastes 4:9-10 says, "Two are better than one because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who is alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up." I love this verse. Two are better than one. Man, woe to the person who has no one around them to pick them up when life is hard. When you get pushed down, no one is there to pick you up. What this looks like can be pushing into relationships instead of pulling away. Again, I was all about isolating myself. Through college, any moment I could, I wanted to push away from relationships. I wanted to bottle up my emotions. But thankfully, I had such amazing friends in my life who wouldn't let me do that. I had amazing friends in my life who loved God, who wanted what was best for me, and would continually seek me out and pick me up even whenever I didn't want to, even when I wanted to be alone. Prioritize Bible studies. Prioritize community like the one in this room. Prioritize people in your life who are going to be the ones to point you back to God, point you back to the true solution. Prioritize those people, especially in the face of hard things. The third practice in the midst of hardship is prayer. The word peace is written in the Bible 430 times. 430 times. That's a lot. The Bible talks a lot about peace. And it makes me wonder if the reason why the Bible talks about peace so much is because the world lacks it. There is so little peace. Yet what the Bible is saying is God is the solution to that. If you want peace, come to God. Go to God in prayer. 2 Corinthians 1, 3 and 4 says, "Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of mercies and God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our affliction." I love this verse so much because it talks about how God is the God of all comfort, not just some comfort. It's not, I'm going to go to 50% God and I'll go to 50% this other thing, but no, He's the God of all comfort. He gives you all the comfort you could ever need just by going to Him, and He comforts us in all our affliction. There's not a single affliction too big or too small that God cannot comfort. He can comfort it all. He's the God of all comfort, and He comforts all of our affliction. Man, what an amazing promise. What an amazing promise. And all we have to do is go to Him. Go to Him in prayer. Create a habit of prayer when times are good, so that is your foundation when times are hard. Man, it's something that I worked really hard to do so that whenever times get really, really hard, man, my natural reaction is to go to prayer. Block off 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes while you're walking to class to commit time to talking to God and praying to Him. You will be surprised the amount of comfort and peace that will follow. I want you guys to discuss this question. Of the three practices, process, people, and prayer, which is hardest for you to do in the midst of hardship? Man, facing hardship with God is the true solution. The true solution. But the true first step actually starts with committing your life to Jesus. Man, none of this stuff is going to work unless you fully commit to Jesus. If you've never made that decision before, you don't really know what that looks like, talk to the person that brought you or talk to one of us who works for StuMo. We would love to tell you more of what that looks like. But the true first step is making the decision to truly follow Jesus. And by doing so, you will reap the benefits of everything that I talked about today. Man, getting to face hardship with God. A little over a year ago, sadly, my dad passed away. Through the course of dementia, in his life just kind of, he just got worse and worse and worse, and he passed away a little over a year ago. And I went home for a couple weeks to just spend the last couple weeks with my dad, and at this point, he couldn't walk anymore. He couldn't speak. He couldn't understand. He probably didn't even know who I was anymore. And I remember one moment. Again, I have two moments of my dad, two moments that I will never forget. The one I already shared, then this one. It's Sunday morning. We're at our house. My dad's laying in bed. My whole family's there. And it's Sunday morning, so we have church on the TV. And as church is going, worship is playing. They're singing songs of worship, and we're all sitting there looking up at the screen. And I remember looking down at my dad. And my dad, his hand was in the air, and he was trying to mouth the words of the song. In his last few days of his life, he was worshiping God the Father. It was one of the most incredible moments of my entire life. You see, my dad faced hardship all through his life to prepare him for the greatest hardship he could ever face. And through it, he had endurance, he had character, and best of all, he had hope. Thank you guys so much